if you say, I don't want to do that, just replace that with, I don't want it bad enough.
All right, you all, welcome back for another episode. I love when we have different and unique perspectives on entrepreneurship, and today we're going to be bringing an artistic and creative bent to what we're talking about, but still founded in entrepreneurship, business, growth, and at the end of the day, how can we help people positively change their lives? So today's guest, finally someone who doesn't have a difficult name for me to pronounce. So Tim Packer, thank your parents and previous generations for making it easy on me. Tim's a professional artist, creative business mentor, and founder of the Tim Packer Art Academy. Tim's a former police detective who made the leap into entrepreneurship and went on to build a multi-million-dollar art business by mastering not just the creative side of his craft, but the business side as well. Today, he helps artists around the world build sustainable, profitable careers, and he's also the author of the recent bestseller hitting the tops of charts, You Can Sell Your Art, which challenges the idea that success in creative work is about talent alone. I think I said that wrong. It's not just about talent alone. It's going to be about business. Talent alone. This is good. And so I'm excited to dig into the systems, the mindset shifts, and the real world mechanics behind turning creativity into a viable business. Tim, welcome to Necessary Entrepreneur.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
So we'll get into the book at some point. I'll weave it in. You're having massive success at launch. We'll talk about where they can get it, all that stuff, and we'll tag it in the shows. But what is so wrong about creatives and artists making money and making a living and not starving? What's so bad about that?
The problem is out there in the artistic community, for some reason, I don't know how this ever got started, that somehow if you are successful financially, that you are somehow selling out. That somehow it should not be about money. Money should never enter the conversation. And art is pretty much the only field where there is that kind of feeling. And then on the other hand, there's the feeling that, well, you can't make a living from your art because so many artists are starving. And so, like, I'm here to say that, yes, you can make a very, very good living from your art. And if you do so, you should be proud of that. You should not be shy or embarrassed or apologize for making a very good living from your art. And it's one of the only, I guess in music, it is a little bit too. You get people kind of, it's like if you discover that indie band that you really love, for a lot of people, as soon as they blow up, their fans are not happy. Right? It's like, oh, now they've sold out. It's like, no, everyone else just realized what you did early on, that they love the music. But we don't kind of criticize any of our other people. We don't criticize, again, Adele for being so successful, right? Taylor Swift. We don't criticize Tiger Woods for making millions from golf, or baseball players or hockey players or any sort of athletes. But somehow in the creative world, there's this thought that money should never enter into it. And I'm here to say that's wrong in my belief. And that's why so many artists are starving.
But do you think that this has happened? We won't delve too much into mindset and philosophy and all that. But has this happened because they haven't achieved it yet, and it feels like some threat or some fear that they're going to be outed, that they're not good enough because their thing isn't selling? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Oh, for sure it is. It's mindset. If you don't believe you can make a living from your art, you won't, right? If you don't believe you can be successful, if you do believe you can be successful, you will. But there is a real kind of thing that permeates the whole arts. Like, I have so many people, adults now, that are in my art academy, that when they were young, they had a real interest in art, and they were discouraged from pursuing it in any meaningful way because the common wisdom was you are not going to be able to make a living from it, right? From guidance counselors, from parents, whatever. And it's simply not true.
What do we make, though, of all for me, being an outsider in the art world, if you gave me a pencil, a piece of charcoal, or a paintbrush, you do not want to see the outcome. I'm telling you don't. I'm sure if I spent more time, I would get a little bit better, but I have a brother that you give him a pencil and the things he creates is just, he was born this way.
Yeah.
But what do we make of people in the past, these really well-known artists that they didn't make any money and they were poor while they were living.
Yeah.
But once they were dead, it caught on and their paintings became worth millions. Like, should we take solace in that? Should we be okay with that? Should artists be like, well, I might be poor now, but someday when I'm gone, maybe it'll be worth millions?
Absolutely not. The reason those stories came about, and Van Gogh was the one everybody talks about the most. Like, his life was so miserable, he killed himself, right? But it's funny, he's the one a lot of artists hold up to as some kind of noble example. It's like, that's not who you want as a role model. The reason that happened, and it happened many, many times over the course of the years, was because there was gatekeepers, right? There was people that had the ability to either have your work shown or not shown. And for him, it was Goupil's. His brother actually worked for one of the biggest art dealers in Europe, but he couldn't even get Goupil's to carry Vincent's work. But once Vincent died and his brother's wife actually went around, collected a bunch of his stuff, put a show on. Once people saw his work, that's why he took off, because people loved the work. Well, now there's no gatekeepers. We have social media. We have art festivals where you just pay your money and you hang up your work. So you have the ability to get your work out there in front of people. And then the public decides. And that's one of the biggest things I think too that artists don't understand, is that there's no one art world. There's a bunch of different art villages. And one art village is the village of contemporary museums, universities, where postmodernism dominates, right? That's where you have a banana duct taped to the wall. That's where you have the meat dress. That's where you have, there was an actual exhibition in a very well-known gallery in London of invisible works of art, right? Where people just come and talk about it. And it's all about, what did the artist think? What did the artist feel? But here, people don't actually buy the work, hang it in their homes. There's government grants, or when there are big purchases, it's by kind of big institutions. And I'm not in that village. I live in the village, what I call commercial sales. And that is the village where real people buy my art or buy my prints to take them home and hang them on their walls in their home or in their offices. And that is a huge village. And I think that's the village that most of us, when we start, if you're drawn to art, you want to start painting and drawing, that's what you want to be doing, right? You want to be going in there and creating work that you really love. And here's the thing about the village of commercial sales, that despite all of the kind of pressure over the last 50, 60 years to push postmodernism, conceptual art, pile of bricks with a feather on it type of thing, the vast majority of the public and the art buying public still values the things that we as a civilization have valued in artists since the dawn of time. They value skill, they value beauty, they value craft, they value mastery. And in this world, it's not about what I thought or what I felt when I was creating the work. It's what you feel when you see it, or what the public feels when they see it. And the fact now that we have with social media, again, with art festivals, all of these ways to get your work seen, that the public decides who is successful and who is not. It's not some art critic. It's not an art professor. And so just understanding that is huge, because what happens with a lot of artists is they're like, maybe they went to university and they got a degree kind of focusing on postmodernism. And so they're like, okay, well, I want to show a little bit of skill in my work here, but there's also some deeper meaning. I want to comment on capitalism or whatever. So they show work with a little bit of meaning and a little bit of skill, and nobody bites, because there's no village that appreciates that. You're either all in on the postmodernist village, or if you're all in on actually creating work that people want to buy, then that's a conversation now about what do you need to do and what does your art have to do to actually get enough people to love your work that you can make a good living.
So what has to be done?
Okay.
Is it just aware? Is it start out with just awareness? I want to know.
It's just starting out with awareness that that's what you need to do. And so again, what does this community value? All those things I talked about, right? Mastery, craft, skill. So you need to master all of the skills first. You need to master drawing. You need to master composition. You need to master color. You need to master different brush techniques, all of that kind of thing. You just have to become incredibly skillful. And then you need to find a way to create work that people absolutely love, where it stops them in their tracks and they just go, oh my God, I want to have that, with a unique voice. And it's the same as in music, right? If you watch American Idol, you watch The Voice, there's all kinds of these people come on. They've got beautiful technical voices, and they all kind of sound the same. And they end up just being corporate singers. But then you see someone that comes in that might not even have as much skill technically, but they've got a unique voice and a unique sound that as soon as you hear it, you go, oh my God. And if that's what you want, that's the only person that does it. You need to develop that within your art too. So you need to have great work with a unique voice. And we define great work in this village as work that stops people in their tracks, takes their breath away. It inspires that biblical feeling of coveting, right? They just see it and go, oh, I want to take that home with me. If you can do that with a unique voice, you can make a very good living as an artist. Until or unless you do that, it's going to be like you're always just pushing a boulder up a hill. And most artists stop before they get there, and they spend their whole life trying to market their pretty good work. And the problem is there's a million artists out there creating pretty good work. And then it just comes down to who's the best value, who's the cheapest. And that's the only way you have to differentiate.
Yeah. You don't want to be a commodity, right? That's what it seems like so many are.
Yeah. And it's just like, think of it this way. If you want to make your living doing anything that people actually do as a hobby, you need to be great, right?
You talked about mastery. You talked about mastery.
You can't be really good and make a living on the PGA Tour. You can't be really good and make a living as a professional athlete or as a musician. You got to be great, right? You can be really good as an accountant and make an incredible living because you don't have people giving away doing your tax returns for free on the weekend. But there are all kinds of, we all know artists, friends who are hobbyists, or even people early in their career who are giving art away. There's people at art festivals that are selling paintings for $100 or $200. So there's no lack of low cost art out there for people. You're competing with people, like I say, who are just giving it away. So you need to be great. And people don't pay, and they're not going to pay a lot for just pretty good or moderately competent. And so that's the biggest thing.
So you touched on something where you said, you need to master all these different categories and areas, but then you need to figure out what people want.
Yes.
See that, I think there would be, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in the system of, all the artists and in the world. A lot of people would say that's not authentic. Come on, Tim, that's not authentic, but you're meeting the market. There's something called product market fit.
Yeah.
And if a business talks about product market fit, you're making an argument, correct me if I'm wrong, that an artist needs to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not about you just doing what you love without regard to whether people appreciate it. That can be a wonderful hobby. But let's be clear, it's a hobby. If you want to make a living from your art, you do need to find a way where three things can happen, where you love the process of creating the work more than anything else, where you love and are proud of the work, and enough of the public, capital L, loves the work that they are going to buy your work and at a rate that you can't keep up with. And there is a way to do all three. You don't want to get into a situation where you're just kind of chasing a market. You go, oh, Western art's big. I don't really like Western art, but I'm going to do that to make a living. No, that's not it at all. But what you do need to do is, once you've mastered all these skills, you seek out influences. This is just like music, right? Some of the best people now, it's like when you talk about their history, they had all kinds of influences. They played maybe classical music when they were a kid. They took lessons, and then they were in a garage band playing punk, and then they were in the university band, and they played in a country band for a while, and then they tried something else. And then all of these influences that led, because what we call talent is really just four things. It's your skill, your knowledge, your experience, and your creativity. And so seeking out all of these influences and spending time there, you're increasing your skill, you're increasing your knowledge, your experience, and your creativity. And then what you need to do is, every once in a while, you go into what's called pure process mode, where you're saying, okay, I've now amassed all of this stuff, all of these skills, knowledge, experience. Now I'm really going to push my creativity and just try and put these things together in different ways. Try different subject matters. Try kind of just, well, what if I did this? What if I took this thing I learned from this artist, but I matched it with what I learned over here from this artist? What if I put those two things together? And you're just playing that what if game. And that's called process. And the important thing about process mode is, when you're in process mode, you're doing something you don't know how to do that you've never done before, and there's a very good chance it will fail. And so what you need to know when you go into process mode is that failure is a likely outcome and it's okay. You need to give permission for the thing to fail, right? If you go, what if I try this, try that, and you paint a dog's breakfast, it was a successful painting exercise. Because guess what? You just learned what not to do next time when you end up in this situation. But when you're in that process mode, that's where you have breakthroughs, right? That's where you'll create a painting better than anything you've ever done before. Or the painting may fail, but you go, wow, what happened in this little corner? I really like that. Okay, now I'm going to kind of focus on that. And when you're doing all of this stuff, you're keenly focused on three things. How much did I love the experience of creating that in that way? How much did I love that process? How much do I love the finished work? And then what's the reaction of other people who see the work? And you let those three things guide you. And you're always digging deeper. You're digging deeper, first of all, where you love the process and you love the finished work. But then you put that work out in front of the public. And it's like, if they just go, oh, that's nice, then this isn't it. So it's like back into process mode, back pushing your creativity until you reach that thing where you go, wow, I love this. I love the process. And then you put it out there and then the world goes crazy over it. And then if you want, you can ride that pony into the sunset. But that's it. You need to love what you're doing. So it is authentic. You're not chasing something else. You're just trying to find, it's like if you're the boss, you're trying to find Bruce Springsteen, right? He didn't start out. So you're trying all this stuff to kind of find out who you are, or whether it's Bob Dylan or whoever.
You know what I saw one time? I saw an interview one time with Charlie Rose was interviewing Phil Collins. I'm going to date myself. He's people now in their 20s and 30s probably don't know who he is, but he was a really good singer.
I love Phil Collins, man.
Love him, man.
Genesis and then on to his own.
Yeah, so good. But Charlie Rose asked him, and this actually is a metaphor for what artists should do and what you're arguing. Charlie Rose ripped off like 8 of his top songs, ripped them off, and all of us would know him. And he said, hey, of all these songs, which one was most impactful and do you like the most? And Phil Collins said, none of them.
Yeah.
He said, they're just the audience and crowd's favorites, so I play them.
Yeah. Yeah. You could see, so I'll tell you a little thing. You can see behind me, I've got a picture, and my thing that I become known for. So I'm very, very big part of the business is teaching other artists, but I'm still very involved in creating paintings, selling my prints, and I've had a very good career on that. And the thing that I have really become known for is the sun shining through the trees. That's been my motif. And people always say, you are a master at painting the light. And people often think like, do you have a flashlight? Like, how do you make that shine so bright and everything? And I do. And that's also why you need to love the thing that the public goes crazy over, because when it hits, you're going to be asked to do a lot of it. And I remember an interview with Rod Stewart. And so again, because music and painting, there's so much in there. And the interview asked him, do you ever get tired of playing Maggie May? And he said, yeah, you know what? There are certain songs that, I'd be okay not playing them for a while. But he said, you know what? These people that out there that buy my music and come to my concerts, they've given me a fabulous living because they love my music. And I know there may be a person out there that's waited their whole life to be able to afford a ticket and get a ticket when I happen to be in their town. And that person wants to hear Maggie May. So I am going to play Maggie May. And so a few buddies of mine, we talk about it and it's like, I'll do another painting with the sun in it. And they're like, Maggie May. It's like, you're darn right, Maggie May, buddy. Because the same thing, someone may have been waiting. My work's not cheap. And someone may have been waiting a long time. It's like, okay, we're ready to plunk out a few $1,000s on an original. And they've been following my career. Maybe they bought prints or whatever, but they really, really want what I'm known for, which is the sun coming through the trees. So I'll do that. It wouldn't have been authentic if I thought, oh, this is a motif that I think can make money. It was something that organically happened. And when I painted the first sun through the trees, I actually thought this might be the best painting I've ever done. And then when it got seen, the reaction was over the top. And then the first time I actually had a body of work of this subject matter in this style, I went from making about 25,000 total sales a year before to doing 28,000 sales in a weekend of this work. And that's what I mean about the public not being shy once you hit that thing. And then I've made a very good career on kind of continuing just to kind of dig deeper on that theme and put that work out there. And then now into the teaching and the online academy and everything else. But it's like, this is still what I love doing. Every year I give myself about 3 weeks or a month where I go back into process mode, because I often think, I don't know, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something else that I could do that would be even better, that I would love more and the public would love more. So every year I give myself about 3 weeks or a month where I just go into that pure process mode, and I'm in the studio and I'm just trying stuff, playing around, and just trying to push that creativity. And to date, I still haven't found anything that I love painting as much as the stuff that I do. And so if I ever do, you'll never see any more of the sun coming through the trees. But in the meantime, it's like, yeah, I'm going to sing Maggie May.
How long had you been an artist? Not saying the 8-year-old Tim, but how long do you really think that you saw yourself as quality and skilled from the time that moment happened to when you painted the sun through the trees and you went, wow, this might be the best painting I've ever painted?
Yeah,
what period of time?
So I studied art as a kid in high school, commercial art, took graphic design in college. And then at 21, just kind of made the decision, I'm not talented enough to be an artist. I should have just put a yet on the end of that. It would have been a lot more accurate, because I'm a heck of a lot more talented than I was then. Mm-hmm. But I got really serious about my painting probably around 1996. And I started doing it as a bit of a side hustle. I was a high realism portrait painter, and I actually started doing a lot of commission portraits. I quit the police force in 2000, and I was painting full time for 5 years until that forest window came out. The first 2 years, I was doing a lot of commission portraits. I started painting people because when I was getting back into art, and I'm an analytical guy. I was a detective in our commercial crime unit investigating frauds over $2 million. So like I'm a research guy. It's like, I'm going to get back serious about my art. What should I paint? And everything that I read said, well, paint what you love. So it's like, well, I had 2 young boys who were like 3 and 5 years old. So I started doing paintings of my boys. And then that led to me doing portraits of other people. And then when I left, I thought I was going to make my living as a commissioned portrait painter, only to realize that while I loved painting people the way I wanted to paint them to create like a good piece of art, I hated painting other people's people the way they wanted me to paint them. And all of a sudden it had turned into a job. And so that was 2 years after I left the force. And then I spent about 3 years where I was painting portraits about half of my time. And the other half, I was totally in that mode of seeking out influences, trying to learn what I could learn from them, and then spending time in process, trying to create something unique from me. And so it was like a 5-year process after I was full time until that happened. But the thing is too, I had no idea what I was doing. Now I can actually articulate what happened and how I got there. I've had a number of students that have been able to make that kind of leap in 1 to 2 years by kind of following this process of mastering the skills, looking out the things that I call dominoes, right? Like, what's the one thing, this is in business too. What's the one thing that you're not really good at right now, that if you could master that would have the biggest impact on you and your business and career going forward? And we often tend to just avoid things that bring up that weakness, as opposed to saying, no, I need to tackle that and make that a strength and master it. And so kind of doing this process, you can really fast forward the timeline. I spent a lot of time focused on things that really didn't move the needle at all and that really were a waste of time. And a lot of time following advice that I believe now is just inherently wrong, that I hear artists getting all the time.
When you painted the first one, the sun through the trees, and you said this might be the best painting ever.
Yeah.
You know why? What about it that you felt that? And obviously you were right, but what about it? What happened that you looked at that and said, it's not just a feeling, is it? Or is that all it is?
No, well, it was. I just went, wow, that is so much better Like, I just know that, like, I'd spent, by this time I think at that time I was president of the Canadian Watercolor Society. So I'd associated with a lot of really great artists, right? And I knew a lot of really great art. And I know that feeling when a painting, it's just like, the first time you hear a song that you often, that's going to be a hit. Right? You just know it. And it's the same thing when you see a painting that just reaches out and makes you just feel something. That was the first time I'd ever created a piece that did that to me, one of my own pieces, and me going, oh my God, that's up there with the artists whose work I do put on that pedestal. Right. And so again, I thought that, but it really, whether I felt that or not didn't really matter until the public decided. And so the story there is I was doing an art festival. And at the time I was all over the map creatively because I was in that process mode. And so if you came into my tent, you would see some watercolor portraits, some oil portraits. You'd see some landscapes, some still lifes, some of them very impressionistic, some of them surreal, some in casein, some in oil, some like all over the map. People would often ask me, is this all your work? And I said, yeah, because I'm trying to find that voice. Right. So this particular show, that piece was there, and they opened the show at like 10 o'clock. A couple walked into my booth like 5 after 10. They bought that painting. And then the best thing that ever happened to me in my career, they said, we just got here and we want to shop. So is it okay if we just leave it? We'll pay you now and we'll come back. I could have sold that painting every 5 minutes. Everybody that came into my booth just went, oh my God. And then it's like, sorry, it's sold. Sorry, it's sold. And then what happened is they were so disappointed that piece was sold, they just walk out of my booth. So I finally, about half an hour in, I took it down and wrapped it up because people weren't looking at my other work. So, but that's the kind of reaction that you have to the work. And then the next thing was there was a charity auction, fundraiser for the Burlington Art Center, big art center here. And this was like a black tie affair. This was something that Robert Bateman, who's famous Canadian artist, famous internationally, you may have heard of him, does a lot of wildlife. He had actually been involved in supplying funding to get this started. And he always donated a small, either original or pencil sketch for the auction that would go for like $5,000 or whatever, $7,000. But so there was well-heeled people here, looking to spend money. And so I put 2 pieces in this new style into that auction. They both sold at auction for double what I was charging for my work at that point. And the next morning, one of the ladies that was involved in the committee, she called me and asked me if she could commission a piece at the price that I put on them, not the auction price. And so it's kind of like, okay, that's what it looks like, right? When you find that thing. And then I very quickly went from, so that first year where, again, I think that first year that this style came out, I went from making $25,000 the year before to probably making about $50,000. And then within a few years, I was up into 6 figures and then multiple 6 figures without me really doing anything business-wise. It was just that as people saw the work, more galleries wanted to carry my work, more people wanted to buy my work. As the demand went up, the prices went up. So my prices went up by 5 times over the course of the next 5 or 6 years. So even with just doing the same amount of paintings, my income was growing dramatically. And then I started looking at but at that point, I'm still trading time for dollars, right? It's like, as soon as you stop painting, the faucet gets turned off. And so that's when I got into doing limited edition prints of my work. So I started self-publishing, just small. And I was actually picked up by one of the big publishers, Mill Pond Press, and they were selling my work and doing well. But there had been a thing happen in publishing. There was a time when, the top kind of artists would do limited edition print run of 30,000 prints, right?
That's limited edition.
That was back then. Yeah. And so the artist only gets typically about 7%, 8% of retail. But when you're doing 30,000 prints, and they're selling for $400 or $500, $600 a pop, that's good. But everybody was buying these prints thinking that they were investments, right? Almost like stock certificates. And there was actually a aftermarket where stuff would go up. But then it was one of the big crashes in the 90s of the stock market. And all of a sudden, everybody's in tight spaces. Well, I'll sell my Robert Bateman prints or my Trish Romance or Kincaid, whatever, only to realize everybody else had a stack of them under their bed, saving for a rainy day. And so the price just plummeted. And then people started saying, well, if it's going to be limited edition, I really want it limited of 100.
Yeah, that's what I was going to throw out. I was going to throw out 100. Yeah.
Yeah. So now with the big publisher, they did 100,000 that first year that I was with a big publisher. They did over 100,000 in sales of my work, and I got like $6,000. And I thought, yeah, this is not really a model that I want to support.
Wouldn't you rather do 10 and you make 50?
Exactly. Right. So that's the thing. So that's when I got, and there'd been some dramatic changes. There's been so much change in terms of like, who are the gatekeepers and who has the power here? Because at one time you needed to get this done through offset litho. So it was a major investment to, my dad actually was a head pressman at one of the top fine art publishing companies in Toronto. Well, to get a fine art print on paper, you needed a press that was like, the size of a Mack truck that was worth over $1 million, took like about 6 skilled tradesmen to run the press. You needed the photographers, you needed the film strippers, the dot etchers, you needed all these skilled tradesmen. So it was very expensive to create prints. And it was only worth it if you were going to order them all at once. Like order 500 prints or whatever. Well, then with the advent of digital printing and Giclée printers, now you can do it all on your own. I do all of my own publishing, and with all of the equipment together, the camera, computer, and printer, you're looking at $25,000. And I can print stuff that my dad, he just passed away last year. He had a very good life, but he used to come and look at the stuff that I did, and he said nothing in his career that ever came off their presses came close to what I can do. And so now it's like, okay, why am I giving someone 95% of this? If I can find a way to market myself, then my margins are going to be like 90% on it. So that we got into the whole kind of publishing side of things. But then it's like, how are we going to market it? So, well, here comes social media.
Yeah, technology's good and bad, right? I mean, The technology led to you being able to have all that equipment for $25,000. And I'm sure that's what you're doing, with the book and with the Art Academy. But here's the question too. What do we make of a guy like Banksy these days?
That's a whole different village, right? That's in the village. Do you think,
here's the question that I want you to push back, a guy not from the outside. Do you think there's an argument out here that there will be someday in the future that none of us are going to live to see? 100 years, 200 years, that artist and artistry and paintings, the physical won't be valuable?
I don't think so. I think, and you're talking about AI, right? I think that
all of it. That I could put it in and say, make me a sun behind the trees image.
Yep.
Almost similar to the way that Tim Packer would do, and put Mark Perkins' philosophy laid on top of it.
Yep.
And really quick, it's going to give me something.
Yeah. But here's the thing. What do most people feel about AI? There's two ways people feel about it, right? They either welcome it as an opportunity, which I'm actually part of that too. I welcome it as an opportunity for me to create tasks that I used to have to spend a lot of time doing, or I used to have to hire someone to do. I can do very quickly.
That
now.
Part is awesome. It's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
But people are really pushing back against the fact that, was this touched by the hand of an artist? And I think that's always going to be there. I think that the more that AI gets out there, the more that things that are created solely by the hand of an artist, craftsman, whatever you want to call them, that is actually going to have more value to people. And it's the same way. I mean, I could paint a painting that you probably couldn't tell the difference from a Monet, right? Because once you get a certain amount of skills, you can do it. That painting that I do might be worth a few $100 or $1,000. The one that Monet did is going to be worth a couple million because Monet did it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the same kind of thing is going to happen. That there is a real hunger, I think, in people in the way that, and a lot of people are just terrified of AI, right? So a lot of people are just like, they are not going to go near anything in terms of buying something to come into their house that was created by AI, because now that's just furthering the anxiety every time they look at that. But I use AI a lot for you, like YouTube. This is a perfect example. The I do a lot on YouTube, and that's probably the best place that I've found to market my online art academy. But when I create a YouTube video, what I used to do 2 years ago was, go through the whole video afterwards, marking out the timestamps, creating the timestamps, creating the description, then going in on YouTube and putting the keywords in. Now I just get it automatically. Give me the captions. I'm going to export that as a text file. Then I'm going to go on ChatGPT and I'm going to say, here's the transcript from my latest video. It's 12 minutes and 35 seconds. Can you give me timestamps? Can you give me a description? And can you suggest keywords up to 500 characters with a comma and a space after them? That used to be 4 or 5 hours of my time that was not creative at all. It was just, and so it's taking all of this from the content that I've done that's creative, but it's now that's time I can spend painting instead of doing that. So I think that AI, especially as an entrepreneur, it is a really, really good thing. It can help us with copywriting if you're not good at that, at creating hooks, kind of ads, all of that kind of stuff, as long as it's layered on top of your content, your creativity, not just going into AI and saying, okay, give me an ad or whatever, but, going in and kind of uploading all of your stuff, right? Things you believe in, transcripts from you, from talking, speeches, whatever, and saying, based on this, can you suggest 6 hooks for an ad for whatever, right? That's what you used to have to pay a copywriter to do.
Here's what's awesome. I think that, we can get into, the book that you wrote in the Academy. I now know from sitting here and talking for 30 minutes, you didn't just rest on being a great artist. You spent time mastering marketing, systems, technology, and business.
Yeah,
there is no doubt. You've done the work. You have done the work from a marketing perspective on how do I get the word out to tell the world about my paintings, about what I can do. And I think I'm going to be really honest. There's a lot of people who stop. I don't want to do that. I just want to be an artist. I don't want to have to do it, right? And so then what you're going to do is, do you want to be a complainer in life and sit here and complain? I have all this great art, but nobody will buy it. Well, because you won't do the other work.
Yep, exactly. If you are an artist, if anybody's listening here and they are an artist or they want to be an artist, the number one thing you need to understand is that you are also an entrepreneur. And everything that applies to every other small business owner or big business owner, ideally, if you get there, applies to you. It doesn't matter what they're doing. And it's kind of like every time, and I say that to my artists all the time, that like, if you say, I don't want to do that, just replace that with, I don't want it bad enough to do that. Because one of the things that I hate, some sayings that people, you hear them trotted out all the time, but when you really kind of, take them apart, they're harmful. And one of the worst ones is that if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life.
Oh,
it's
bullshit.
like, oh my God, I wish
bullshit.
I could.
You know who says that? You know who says it? People who have already made $1 billion.
Yeah.
Isn't that just such a load of crap?
Because if you take it apart, it means, well, I shouldn't have to do anything that feels like work then. I'm doing what I love, right? I like to replace that with, if you have the audacity to want the world to reward you with a comfortable living for you doing the thing that you love the most, you had better be willing to work harder at that than anything you've ever done in your life. And if you're not, then get a job and keep that thing as a hobby. Because if it's what you, if what you love is accounting, it's like, okay. But if what you love is painting or doing pottery or stained glass or playing the guitar, these are all things that millions of people do as a hobby. It's like you don't get the world to reward you unless you become great at it.
You know what? Here's what,
business.
Yeah. So here's what so many of the folks that are really successful in life, what they really know. Nothing is happening until stuff is sold.
Yep.
That's it. Right? Because to your point, if you can't sell your artwork for enough to give you a really good livelihood, so then you can do the thing you love. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be a hobby.
Yep.
It's not going to be your career. And so I think there might be some good intentions maybe from these folks saying find something you love and you won't feel like you have to work a day in your life. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said it just like you. It's like, I feel like I have to work every day,
Yep.
but there's still
Me
things
too.
about it I love.
Yep.
But I feel like I have to work. I mean, I've never, and all those people, the reason why they're so disingenuous, show me on their worst day in business. I guarantee they weren't loving it.
Yep. Yep. There's all kinds of stuff. You're a business owner, right? And so it's like, the thing is, there's only one reason to want to do this too. I think, because for me, when I left the police force, it was a friend of mine, a young guy, was murdered on the job, in the line of duty. And you know, when that happens, you take stock of your life. And I just really realized that, like, I had kind of walked away from art and I wasn't really painting. And I thought, well, when I retire, I can get back to it. And then maybe I can turn it into something. And then when my friend was killed, and I was in my 30s at the time, and so was he, I realized there's no guarantee. It's like, I'm an artist, but I'm not painting. And most people who know me don't even know that I'm an artist. So I just kind of decided, well, I got to get back to doing this. But I never ever thought that it was going to be a career. I just needed to get back to doing it because it was the thing I loved. And then I realized that, you know, when I made the decision, my wife and I made the decision for me to leave the police force, I knew that for me to reach my ultimate potential as an artist, because by then I'd actually started to become pretty good, and I thought, wow, I could actually be really good. If I can do that every day, I'm going to get better quicker. And I want to be able to get up every day and paint. Well, there's only 3 ways to be able to do that. You can have a very rich, supportive spouse who just says, well, you go and be fulfilled. I didn't have that. You can win the lottery, or you can figure out a way to make a living from doing the thing that you love. But you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing things that you don't love. You're going to have to spend time doing things that you really don't want to do, that are just necessary to being a business person, right? Because you're the CEO of you, whether you're an artist or whether you run a plumbing company, or doesn't matter what it is. But if you want to be able to do this and not have another job, you got to figure out a way to make a living. That's it. And
So,
if
go ahead.
I was just saying, people are like, well, I don't want to do that. That's great. Keep your job doing whatever you're doing and paint in your spare time. But the worst part though is, like, don't come down on and disparage the people who are actually out there doing this and making a good living. It's like, it's not for everyone, but it's a choice, right?
Yeah, the message here, it's not to say, I think what Mark and Tim are saying, we're not saying don't do what you love. We're actually saying do what you love, but don't think it's not going to be work every day.
Yeah. And don't think, like, I love golf. That's a perfect analogy, right? I love golf. I have way over the 10,000 hours in golf. I'm still an 18 handicap. I know no one is going to pay me to play golf at an 18 handicap. And it's the same thing. There are a lot of people out there who have been painting for 30, 40, 50 years and thinking, well, I've put in the hours. It's like, yeah, but you're a 15 handicapper. The world's not paying to watch that, right? It's like, because, you know, you can do something for thousands and thousands of hours and just get really good at enjoying doing it mediocre, which is me in golf. Or you can spend the time on mastering the skills and improving, and you can get great really quick. There's some young whippersnappers here. We live on a golf course up here in Owen Sound on Georgian Bay, Lake Huron. And I played with some young guys that are like 19 years old, and they took up golf during COVID, and within 4 years they're shooting under par. But it's because they spent all of that time focusing on getting better. I spend all of my time just focusing on enjoying playing mediocre golf and having a few beers with the boys.
There you go. So why spend time? You've had a successful life.
Yeah.
Financially, you get to live on a golf course. I mean, you're a guy, when we first jumped on here, I went, you've got charisma. This is going to be a fun conversation today. You see the good in life. You're optimistic. You're a good friend. People like being around you. Life is good.
Yep.
Why spend time writing this book? You can sell your art. Why do this?
Okay. I told you before, there's quick questions, but no quick answers. So this is a bit of a long one.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal was only ever to make as much money as an artist as I would have made from my pension. I thought if I could get to the point where I do that, then it's a win-win. In 2015, I'd already had a really good year going. And I had a show. This was in the end of November, so towards the end of the year, at a very upscale gallery in Toronto. And it was like the Hollywood Disney version of an artist kind of making it. So the gallery, they closed at 5 o'clock, and then we're reopening at 7 in the evening for the opening of my show. So I was standing in the front of the gallery in the window, in Yorkville, kind of the ritzy area of Toronto, working on a painting. And I could see a half an hour before the show, people starting to line up outside the gallery. The doors opened at 7, and people piled into the gallery. They had the gallery had someone there playing live music. Waiters were walking around with trays of wine, and the red stickers were going up as pieces sold. And I just was sitting there kind of mentally kind of crunching the numbers. And I realized, I'm going to make over $250,000 this year from the sale of my art. And it was just like, oh my God, that is like, I've made it. And that is so far beyond what I was going for. And it felt really good for a few minutes. And then I had another feeling that kind of descended on me that felt a little uncomfortable. At first, I thought I was feeling guilty. And I thought, but it wasn't. It was responsibility, because I realized I wasn't special. I wasn't the kid in the class that everyone thought was going to be the successful artist. Every art class I ever took, there were a lot of artists better than me. I always shook out at about maybe the 70th percentile. But I knew the things that I had done to get here, and I knew I was living the dream that so many people have. And I thought, I have a responsibility to share what I've learned with other artists. So literally the next day, I went down to, because Toronto is like a Hollywood North kind of thing. There's a lot of very high-end kind of film stores and all that kind of stuff. I went in and dropped about $25,000 in camera equipment, sound equipment, lighting, all that, because I thought, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to start sharing everything I've learned with artists for free. And at that point, there was no thought of monetizing it. It was just like an investment in karma, right? It's like just giving back to art that had given me so much. So I started that. Not long after that, a good friend of mine that was a golf buddy, I met his daughter, who was just finishing up her degree in landscape architecture, but she was really interested in art. Make a long story not quite so long. After her getting to know me, she dropped the bomb on her parents right after graduating that she didn't want to be a landscape architect. She wanted to be an artist. And they were not happy with her. Her dad was not happy with me, because he's like, this is all your fault. So I said, listen, I think she's got the fire in her belly. Like, talent is something she can acquire. She's good, but I just had a feeling that she was going to do whatever it took. So I said, listen, let her know if she wants. I'll mentor her, as long as we can film all of our sessions and put them up on my YouTube channel so other artists can kind of learn from that. So we did that. Her name's Brooke Cormier. She is a social media superstar now as an artist, but she was able to earn $30,000 in her very first year. It took me 5 years of painting full time to do that. And then by the end of her second year, she was selling prints of her work internationally, and her work now goes for more than mine. But I was still just doing this as kind of a passion project in my spare time. I was still focusing on my money was coming. You'll find there's a video out there of me on YouTube saying, I will never charge for my teaching. I'm going to make all my money off my rich clients, but I don't want to make money off the backs of starving artists. And a couple things happened. 2019, I almost died twice. I had the thyroid from hell. And again, it kind of makes you think about your life. And I was thinking, I only had one regret when I was thinking this might be it. And I thought that I really hadn't impacted as many artists as I wanted to. So I knew I'd help Brooke, and I'd gotten emails from people from the YouTube that said, they'd followed my stuff and it changed their life. But I really started thinking, that I wish I could have much more impact on many more artists, because that was probably one of the things I'm proudest of, was that whole period with Brooke, and really changing her life. And then I had someone else tell me something that, the whole thing, well, I feel really uncomfortable about charging artists. And they were like, you're being selfish here. That made me feel good. Like I was being somehow noble, that I was only just giving it away. But they said to me, if you were actually to treat this as a business, and you were able to put 100% of your effort into it and to put money into it, and you could impact 10 or 100 or 1,000 times more artists, wouldn't that be better? And I'm like, yeah. And it's like, well, you have to get over that thing. You're going to have to create this as a business. You're going to have to charge artists for your teaching. And at the end of the day, the more money you make from that, the more people you're helping. And I got on, and it's like, okay. And it's almost like the same sort of thing I was talking about, people saying, if you're selling your art, you're selling out, right? I kind of felt that as if I'm charging for my teaching, I don't know. But anyway, so in 2020, we launched the Art Academy, and that's gone amazing. We've had a number of students gone on to amazing success. It's been a successful business. We just passed $600,000 in course sales in 5 years. And then all of my students are like, we need this in a book, for 2 reasons. People need to have this in a low ticket, something that they can spend $10 or $15 on and have. But even all of my students, even the ones that are in the mastermind, said, we want to be able to just flip through to the chapter on pricing your work, or on mindset, or on entering jury shows or whatever. We don't want to have to go through 40 hours of course material to try and find that little bit. So I kind of said, okay, I guess you're right. And so anyways, that was last year about this time. I decided, I guess we're going to write a book.
Awesome.
So we did.
So a couple things. They're throwing something at me. Remember I said earlier.
Yep.
So, but you said one thing that I would love us to take away is you said you recognized in Brooke when her dad was mad at you and her parents were mad at her. You told her dad that, hey, it looks like she's willing to do what it takes.
She's got the fire in her belly. You can spot that, right? And I knew that even going in, because her parents were members at the same golf club we were at. And so I'd run into Brooke at social functions while she was still going to university. And sometimes her dad would come over and say, leave Tim alone, right? Because she was always asking me about art and always asking me, this is while she was she still had 2 more years of university to go. But anytime we were together, she always brought the conversation back to art. She was picking my brains about my business, and kind of, she's like, you're an artist, but you're at this private club with my parents, right? It's like, well, what does your wife do? It's like, well, she was able to retire early because things went so well. And so she's like, all of this based on just your art. And I'm like, yeah. And I could see the wheels turning.
So when you said she has, when she said, you saw it, she has it. You said the fire in the belly.
Yep.
Can we think about not Brooke? Just think about it in general. It's like how you can see it. What's the thing? Like, is it 25 characteristics? What is it?
So it's first of all, it's a passion, right? But passion is not just loving the thing. Passion is having an overwhelming, burning compulsion to master everything about it, and then being willing to do the work to do it. People ask me all the time, like, how was Brooke able to be so successful? We met every month, and every month I would kind of critique what she had done that month. And we'd look at kind of, first of all, for the first 6 months, it was all about developing her art. And then it was starting to get her artwork out there shown and all that. And then it was doing art festivals and social media and all that. But I can tell you the one thing that had made the one most important thing that made her successful is not once in that 2-year period when I said, okay, this week I want you to whatever. She never once said, oh, I don't want to do that. She just said, yep. And then she went and over delivered. And so it was like, if you find yourself saying, I don't want to do that, then you may as well just say, I don't want to be an entrepreneur in this business, because it's like, well, it's kind of like saying, I'd like to be a doctor, but I don't want to have to take chemistry. It's like, well, figure out a way to do that and you'll make $10 million, but you have to pass chemistry if you want to be a doctor. And so it's like, if you want to be an artist, you need to understand business. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand all the other stuff that go in business.
Tell us where to go buy this book. You can sell your art. So we have the Tim Packer Art Academy, but where do we go to find the book?
Amazon. So it's available on Amazon now. It's on Amazon, wherever you are, .ca, UK, we've gotten, so far, so we've hit #1 bestseller in I think 3 different categories already, which I'm very thrilled at, but I'm most thrilled about the reviews. We've gotten 40 reviews so far, and it's like from the US, from Canada, from Sweden, from the UK, I think from Australia, but all the reviews are 5-star. And that's the most important thing for me, is that the people that are reading it are really finding the information helpful. So
good. All right. We're going to promote it. They're going to kick my butt if we don't get off of here. Hey,
okay.
Tim, thanks for being, Thanks for being so authentic about not only a great artist and talking about your paintings and that process, but just see, you're a good business person, but the reason why you're all these things is because you've got the passion. The same
Yep.
thing that you saw in Brooke, you could identify it because you have the same attributes inside of you. And I don't believe that this is just passion for art. I bet when you were a detective in the police force, until your friend, someone you knew, died, I bet you were really passionate about being a really good detective too. Were you not?
Not really. I
About
was
being a
good.
good, that's what I'm saying,
I
about
was
being good.
good.
I didn't say you loved it. About
Yeah,
being a
but I
good
was good.
detective.
I was good. And I advanced up through the rank structure and everything else, but I liked my job. I didn't love it.
But
So
didn't you still put in the time to do it really well?
put in the time to do it really well, but I didn't put in the time to become great at it.
Okay.
I spend all of so I was passionate first about art. Then as you can tell, I'm passionate about business. I'm passionate about teaching. I spend my day, I don't take days off. I
There you
spend
go.
all of my time, if I'm not painting or if I'm not actually working on the marketing or something else, I'm watching YouTube videos to learn what it is I need to know to do whatever it is better, right? Like I didn't do that on the police force. While I was at work, they got 100% out of me. And I always had like amazing performance reviews, but I didn't spend my 6 days off studying on interviewing techniques or kind of like whatever, right? It was a job. And that's what I'm saying. The reason to want to make a living of the thing you love is that it's the thing you spend your time off doing. It's like and you're spending all your time trying to get better at it, master it. But I was really good as a police officer, and I really liked my job, but I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't have the desire to be the best detective on the police force, right? Whereas I have the passion to be. I'm in the top, a comfortable place as an artist. But I think in terms of as a teacher who's able to actually teach artists how to make a living from their work, I think I'm one of the best in the world at that.
That's a
And
great way to end it.
yeah, yeah.
The man just said it. Tim Packer Art Academy. Go buy. You can sell your art on Amazon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.